Hello students and welcome to video 2 in chapter 1.5 Growth and Evolution. So in the last video we looked at these 3 learning objectives, and today we're going to look at internal, external, economies and diseconomies of scale. So just a heads up, historically this is quite a popular question in the IB exam, and so this is really one to focus on. So first thing we need to do is define economies of scale, and then we're going to look at where they come from. So economies of scale, here's our definition. It's when the firm's average cost decreases as it increases its scale of production. And you can see that on the diagram here. So on the x-axis, we've got output, which is level of production, how much they're producing. On the y-axis, you've got average cost. Average cost is calculated as your total cost divided by your output. And so what we're saying is that when we're producing low amounts of a product, then the average cost is going to be quite high. So what that means is if we're not producing very much, the cost of producing each item is likely to be relatively high. Then as we produce more and more, it's going to become cheaper to produce each item. So just to clarify, this doesn't mean that total costs are going down. So sometimes people think, as we produce more, we can see the total costs are going down. It doesn't mean that. As we produce more, the total costs are still going up, but it's the cost of producing one item that is going down. And so basically, as the firm produces more, it's becoming more cost efficient. We then do get something called diseconomies of scale, which is the opposite, which is when the firm's average cost increases as it increases its scale of production. So again, what's going to happen here is as the business produces more and more, the average cost is going to decrease until it reaches a certain point when suddenly the average cost will start to increase. And we call these diseconomies of scale. We'll look at those later. So just a reminder of the average cost formula. You'll see this in another chapter as well when we do finance. But the average cost is your total cost divided by your output, where your output is the amount that you're producing. So where do economies of scale come from? So why do we get this thing where costs are going down as we produce more? Well, we're going to look at 2 types. Firstly, internal economies of scale. And this is economies of scale that come from within the business. Specifically, they come from producing more output. So here we go. The main one is called bulk buying discounts. And we can also call these purchasing economies. So basically, bulk buying is when you buy a lot of a product all at once. And so the more you buy, in theory, you can negotiate better deals from your suppliers. So you should be able to pay less per unit when you're buying your suppliers. So to give an example, let's say you're a bakery producing apple pies. And every month you buy 10 kilograms of apples. So you're going to go to the apple supplier and you're going to buy a load of apples and they're going to charge you a price. Compare that to if you're an apple pie company and you're producing lots and lots of apple pies, and every month you're buying 10 tons of apples. You can see that if you go to your supplier and you want to buy 10 tons, you're probably going to get a better price than if you buy 10 kilograms. The supplier is going to want to sell more apples. And so obviously you're going to pay more for 10 tons than 10 kilograms. But you can see here that per apple, you're probably going to pay less for 10 tons because the supplier is going to give you a better price because they're selling more to you. It's a bit like when you go to the supermarket. If you buy the big bag of chips, you're going to pay a better price than if you buy the smaller pack. Secondly, we get financial economies. And what this basically refers to is that large firms are likely to be trusted more by banks. And so they're therefore going to have a lower cost of borrowing. And so what that means is if you're a small company and you go to the bank to borrow money, then hopefully they'll lend you some money. But because you're a smaller company, they're going to have some doubts about whether you can pay the money back necessarily. If you're a massive company like Apple, then the bank is probably going to be more willing to lend you money because you're much bigger, you've got more assets, you've got more things that you could sell if things go wrong. So as a result, you're going to probably have lower costs of borrowing, which means lower interest rates, which means you're paying less interest on your loans. Managerial economies. This is when we can hire specialists in each area of the business. So if you take a small company, then they're probably going to have something called a general manager. So a general manager is somebody who manages the business but kind of does a bit of everything. Now, as the business becomes bigger, we can now start hiring specialists in each area of the business. So let's say we've got a general manager who's really good at finance and really good at operations management, but maybe they haven't done much marketing in their life. Now, in this situation, they'd be quite good at the finance, but maybe they wouldn't be so good at the marketing. Just an example. Now, if the business grows, we can then hire somebody who's a specialist in marketing. We can hire someone who's a specialist in finance. These people are more likely to be more productive in their areas because they're specializing. They're just doing that job. And so therefore, we should see some cost savings there. Marketing economies, this means we can spread the same marketing campaign over more units of sales. So let's say we spend 5 million in 1 year on marketing, then the more sales we have, we can spread the cost, that 5 million, over more sales. Now, it's true that every year the marketing budget is likely to go up as the business grows. But in general, over a year, the more we sell, then the cheaper on average that marketing is going to be. And finally, technical economies. This basically means that larger firms can afford to buy better machines, they can afford to do better technology, and they can also mass produce. So when a business is small, they're probably unlikely to mass produce, because when you mass produce, you have to go and buy lots of machines, you have to automate the production line. But as a business becomes bigger, then actually mass producing the production line may become viable, may become worth it. And so therefore, we're going to see some cost savings there as well. There are other economies of scale, but these are some of the main 5. Okay, next we've got something called external economies of scale. And these are economies of scale that result from outside the business. Specifically, they come from the fact that the whole industry is growing in size. So the first one is called infrastructure improvements. So infrastructure is things like roads, trains, internet, things like that. And so often what might happen is that if an industry is growing, then maybe the government may help to improve infrastructure in order to help a certain industry. Why would the government do this? Well, they may see that there's going to be better job opportunities. It's going to help the local economy, more taxes for the local government, etc. And so as the government builds better roads, trains, and internet, then it's going to make that business become better and more efficient. So, for example, if there's better roads, then they can deliver their products quicker, and so delivery costs are going to go down. Next up, we may see more skilled labor. And so as an industry grows, then hopefully that industry should see more skilled labor. And so if those businesses are growing, then hopefully more people will qualify in the areas which the industry is working in. And also, more people may choose to locate themselves in that area. And a really good example is Silicon Valley, where Silicon Valley, attracts people working in tech. People go to university there, and they live around that area. So you're going to get better labor. And then finally, suppliers should become more efficient. And so as the whole industry grows, then all of those businesses in the industry are going to be buying from the suppliers. And then hopefully those suppliers grow themselves and they're selling more. And so those suppliers themselves should experience economies of scale. Therefore, their costs are going down, and they should be able to sell their product to other businesses at a lower cost, which means that those other businesses are now getting cheaper raw materials, and therefore production costs are going to go down. Okay, so that's economies of scale, but we do get diseconomies of scale. And if you remember, this is when average costs go up as output increases. So why might this happen? Well, this usually comes from the problems managing a business which is too big. And so the main ones are communication and coordination. And so if you think about it, as a business becomes bigger, then communication between departments, between people becomes more difficult, basically because, firstly, there's more people working in the business. And secondly, people are likely to be located further apart, whether that's located on different floors of a building or located in different offices in different parts of the country. You're also going to get more paperwork, more filing, and specifically more meetings. And I've experienced this myself. As a business becomes bigger, you need to have more meetings because you need to have meetings as a whole company. You have department meetings, you have team meetings, etc. And so the more parts of the business there are, the more time these takes. And obviously meetings take time, which is taken away from the core parts of the business. It also becomes more difficult to coordinate and control. So like I said, when departments of people are spread out, it becomes a lot more difficult to manage it. And to be specific, let's say we've now got 2 offices in different countries and different time zones. And you can clearly see when you've got different time zones, then it's going to become more difficult to interact because at some point you're working, but people in the other office might not be working and vice versa. And finally, you may get decreased staff morale as a business becomes larger. Now, to be specific, in small companies, and I've worked in small companies before, where you do feel more part of the business because there's less employees. And as you become bigger, then because there are so many people, you kind of lose your identity to some point, and you're now a small part of a big company. And so it can sometimes lead to a decrease in morale. And you also get something called an over specialization of labor. So let's talk about that general manager we talked about earlier. In a small company, the general manager is likely to be doing lots of different things, and also employees are likely to be doing different things every day, because there's less employees, people have to do more different tasks. As you specialize as a business, as you bring in marketing people and finance people, people in those departments are going to be doing one job on a more regular basis. So there's going to be less variety in their work because they're specializing in one type of job. And that in itself can lead to a decreased specialization, decreased morale because you're only doing one thing. Okay, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.